It don't matter what I try, I just can't win and I don't know why. There's a fork in every road, I pick the wrong one and then I go. American loser, yes I am, disenfranchised from everything. Well, I fall up and I fall down, an American loser the day I was born.
Hello, welcome to your second edition of the Patreon exclusive, baby. We're here on American Loser. You guys know what it is. You're the founding losers. That's what you guys are, okay? That's our beautiful name for the group that's coming together right now. We're going to keep that name open for the first 56 people to get involved. Dad, you want to say why?
First 56? Let me think on that long and hard. How about the signers of the Declaration?
Yep, there were 56 of them, baby. So we have a guest we're going to bring in here, a good friend of mine in a second I'm going to introduce. Of course, you guys know who is behind the ones and twos.
Come on. It's always me.
Yep, he's happy now because we fed him, guys. All right, we had a pizza break in between episodes.
Got that pizza smile on his
Yeah,
face.
shut up.
No, the real torture here, fellas, is that I can't eat any of that stuff, and it smells goddamn good in this studio. Okay, let's be honest. But guys, this is the second edition of the Patreon. Thank you so much. If you're hearing this episode, that means you're one of our Patreon members. That means a shitload to me. All right. So, like we said, just for a minimum of a $5 donation, some of you decided to give more. Extremely generous of you. Others of you have, missed out on this entirely, which is this episode's not for you guys. You can't hear it, all right, because it's Patreon exclusive.
Yeah, we shouldn't be bad-mouthing the people that didn't sign up.
Exactly.
Because they can't hear us right
They're
now.
missing out, guys, okay? So let's go ahead real quick. I got a little bit of housekeeping we got to do. So I have some new and some old members of the founding losers, if you will. So I got to go read some names out real quick here.
Yeah, just before we jump into that, though, Kev, the first 56, you signed your name on the Declaration of Independence. You were really pretty much signing your death warrant.
Correct.
So, hopefully, our Patreon listeners, this isn't going to go bad for them. It's going to
It's only going up.
bigger and better, right?
Guys,
Bigger and better.
someday, a statue will be made of you that will be torn down hundreds of years after it's misrepresented.
There you go.
So,
Revisionist history, we're going to tear it down.
that is a wild problem with all that stuff here. But like we said, guys, we're not a political show. We're a history show. It's a storytelling show. It's a father and a son. It's a handsome sound engineer, all right? You guys know what we like to do around here. It's
Wait,
a good
I thought
time.
I was the father and son aspect.
Well, that too. It's
Bless you, my son.
Yeah, well, you are invited to Berkfest from now on, so there's that.
I'm so game.
It's Let me hit a couple of the thank yous we got to throw out real quickly. So first and foremost, thank you to our one of our original founding losers, Sandy Burke. You know her?
I do.
That's my mom. My mom supports my Patreon, guys. That's what we're doing. All right. James Mack, a friend of the show. Actually, I can't tell if James Mack was the donor or if it was a friend of James that donated in his name. That could be interesting. Thank you to Mike Sutton. All right. Thank you to Tyler. I think it's Prysock or Prysick, but he goes by Murphy's Wake. Good dude over there, man. I like that guy. John Greco, who got us on Wikipedia. Cousin Jen Jackson, who tried to donate a ridiculous amount of money, and I had to call her and say, "Scale it down. It's monthly, lady." All right.
Read the fine print before you sign up.
Our buddy Matt Bruno, Mr. Pat Dowden, great artist, is going to be sending us a couple of pieces that he's been working on. The immortal Brian Rowe, Chris Hollenbeck, Colin Moran, Alejandro Alvarez, okay, also known as Alex, depending on how you know him. Jake Perro, good guy. Nick Franco, the Ben Franklin of our whole crew here.
Mm-hmm.
Stu Greenberg, the king of the founding losers, if you will.
We didn't kill him with the last episode we recorded.
He's the John Hancock of our founding losers.
Milwaukee Tom, we call this guy, is a really good dude. Eric Kilroy, and of course Matt Dalzell, who we left out on last Patreon episode. I'm so sorry about that. Matt's been nothing but incredibly supportive of the show and is a good and a handsome man who's also an educator in the fine state of New Jersey. So that
we
brings
don't hold that against him, though.
Indeed. That brings us on to the news real quickly here. The new members, all right? T&B Burke, all right? A lot of Burkes on here. I got a good family that supports me. I know who they are. That's my Uncle Terry and my Aunt Barbara. Extremely kind to you guys here. Whoever set this up for you did a nice job. John Jesse Jeffords, 3J, as we call him, a good guy right there. Like him very much. He's going to come on as a guest soon. This guy won't give us his real name, just goes by Captain America. All right. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Captain.
Yep. Danielle Wells, who is a family friend of mine, I would even say at this point now. She's but listens all the time. She is the one who was convinced that the Big Kahuna sings our theme song.
I am.
It's the theme song.
We'll
For
go with
legal
that.
purposes, I have to clearly state our theme song is sung by Robert Rolf Feddersen, who's a great guy that gave us the song for free. So don't fuck this up for me.
Yeah. Litigation is a bitch.
Exactly. But she listens during the day. She'll binge listen to episodes while she's home with her kids. She's going crazy with quarantine, and it's nice to have the support of her. You'd think that her ne'er-do-well younger brother, who's been on the show 3 times, would contribute, but he keeps saying he's going to. Corey Titus Sergio, good guy, Army veteran too, I believe. Thank you for that, brother. I appreciate you. Comedian as well. Paul Petruno, Uncle Paulie, the man who painted you, Kahuna, is now a Patreon member.
Man.
Yep. Mr. Carl Sundquist, a very talented musician out in the Minnesota area who his entire family gets to listen to the show. And good tracks, too. Put a Little Jelly on It that he sent me was a very good track. I got to figure out a way to make that my ringtone.
I got you, man. I'm your technical advisor. I got you.
There you go.
Fresh out of Sing Sing prison, Kerry Burke has joined the Patreon. That is my
Like, wait, they let her out?
Yep, that is apparently one of the witnesses has decided to step down, that they're no longer willing to testify against her.
Yeah, step
purely
down
out of
into a vat of
intimidation.
acid.
Right.
Indeed. James Stiffy or Stifey, I apologize, I screwed that. I think it's just James PA is what I think he goes by on there. But good
James.
guy, loves the show. He sends me some funny shit too, man. Sent me a really funny Photoshop of FDR holding up the Dewey wins in landslide paper. It just says American Loser instead. Our boy Jason Rez, good guy right there, man. Always giving us good ideas for the show. Noah Vogel, who has an interesting story about Gus Grissom Hall. I'll leave it at that. A friend of the show, Paul Logan, comedian, good guy. All right, not Logan Paul, Paul Logan. My pal Ryan Hussein, or Ryan, I think it's Margiota, something like that. He's changed his name a couple times on me. But here's the thing, motherfucker's funny. All right, and I don't think he's doing comedy anymore, and that's annoying me because he's a very funny and thoughtful guy.
It's like, how dare you? You squander such a gift.
That's the truth. And
That's
then there's
it.
terrible people that, as our guest will later attest to, there's terrible people that stay pretending they do comedy. So there's that too. You're not you. You're off the hook. We're about to introduce you in a second too. And then our final member of the founding losers is Christopher Hobart Demarinis, okay, who one of my oldest friends loves the show. You want to talk about something trippy? Me and him were working on a manual labor job together not too long ago, right? And he is driving away in the parking lot, and I hear my voice in his car as he's driving past me with the windows down.
There you go.
That was a little trippy. But you guys know the gist here. We're playing to a home crowd right now. Patreon, we don't have to explain what we do, but
But we do it anyway for 10 minutes, and then we get to the show.
yeah, that was the thing. You had to do that on those. I was like, Patreon,
Well,
we get to...
we wanted to actually reach out, no doubt, and say thanks to all of our founding losers.
Yeah.
There's only a few more slots on the founding loser roll. I think we got maybe 20 spots left in total. After that, it's going to have to turn into the Articles of Loseration, perhaps the Bill of Losers.
That's right.
We'll figure it out from there. But I'm ready to dive in on this week's topic here, or this month's topic for the Patreon exclusive, if you guys are ready.
Ready.
So first and foremost, you guys know the name of the show. It's American Loser. It's the spotlight is firmly on second place here. Welcome to the show. Up-and-coming comedian, friend of mine, a diehard comedy fan too, and a podcaster on the rise in his own right, my pal Mr. Joe Weber. How are you, buddy?
Doing all right, man. Thanks to all the Patreon people for still having the money during COVID to pay for my voice on your air.
It's
Feels good.
the best part of our Patreon is that it's $5. So like, listen, I can either get a coffee today, or I can get however long this podcast is going to go.
Joe Weber's
Or if you're
voice.
rich, you can do both.
Also true. Rich is subjective now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to attack this bad boy. You ready? LP and I did some research. We even stumbled upon a couple of very weird wormholes last night. And so when you guys know something or have any questions, you jump in, right?
Absolutely.
You guys know that the gist on this one. It's a fun hang. We're drinking some Ross Brewing beers here.
There
you
you
know,
go.
the room smells of
Sponsor us.
pizza.
Absolutely.
Be true to your school.
Well, and this is the good news, man. Patreon only. We're playing to the hometown crowd. So if we hit a couple references you guys know, we trust you to know them. You know what I mean? It's good stuff.
Do your homework if you don't.
No, our Patreon is a smart fan base. They really are.
Absolutely.
You are the best.
I would go ahead and say this. I would say that you've made it in America when they name something after you. Could be a breakfast sandwich, could be anything. But you're a part of American history when you're a part of the American lexicon, right? Which means that your name is synonymous with something. So, but what happens if the thing that you're named after becomes more famous than you and then also takes on what would be known as a pejorative or a negative connotation?
Like infamous.
You get your
Like
own,
infamous.
your
Infamous is the
own
word.
ism. Like
Your own ism. I like
your own
that.
ism. That's a level.
That's right. So it would be Cahoonisms. All right. Whenever Kahuna is revealed to actually be the Golden State Killer, we're gonna have a weird, throwback moment to this. But this guy in particular, his last name is famous. Okay, his last name, the thing they named after him, is more famous than he is, and it always has a negative connotation in history. But how bad really was it? Was it as awful as it is? Did it get whitewashed? What's the deal here? We're going to tackle this month's topic here in earnest today, and that is Senator Joe McCarthy of Wisconsin.
In earnest, does he go to jail?
It's Ernest. Ernest earns a communist label. Ernest gets the chair.
Oh God, no!
So
Ernest goes to sleepaway camp.
Well, Senator Joe McCarthy of Wisconsin, whose namesake was used for the often villainously applied McCarthyism.
Yeah. So again, you're right on with the ism. If you're an ism,
Yeah, when I originally heard that this was the premise of the show, I thought it was just going to be like anti-vaxxer, and I didn't know which McCarthy we were going after. So
Even better, the text message, you want to come on, we're talking about McCarthyism. He goes, the chick from MTV?
yeah,
But here's a terrible name if you ever wanted the name of an awful town name, all right? Because I know you don't have to say where you're from, but, Kahuna, you've lived in a couple interesting places in New Jersey, as have everyone here at this table.
Springfield, Bramtown, freaking a little all over the place.
Where are you from, Bramtown? But at least none of us are from Spanktown, which is, I shit you not, what Rahway used to be named.
oof.
But yeah, that's a true story. Rahway used to be named Spanktown, but we won't go down that wormhole today.
That's on
that's
the
a
name
later
of Vegas reconsiderations. They're trying to think of perfect place to rename Vegas is Spanktown. I mean, it is legal down there. So
Hey, you're making me say this now. I'll do it in one sentence so that we don't go off topic. You've made this happen, Kahuna. All right? There was an American Revolutionary skirmish between a Continental militia and the British regulars, known as the Battle of Rahway. That's what we remember it as now, right here in New Jersey.
Battle of Rahway.
It's known as the Battle of Rahway. However, at the time, the settlement was called Spanktown. So
of
there are
Spanktown.
people that died at Spanktown.
Battle of Spanktown.
So when someone has PTSD and wakes up in the middle of the night, or some child at
What
Daddy,
happened, Dad? Spanktown.
tell me about the war. You know your papa doesn't talk about Spanktown.
There's Grenada and there's Spanktown.
Oh man.
But today's loser, Mr. Joe McCarthy, is born in 1908 on a farm in Grand Chute, Wisconsin. Okay?
This guy's really not having the luck on the draw with town names.
No, sir. No, sir. George is the son of a first-generation Irish woman and an Irish-American man, okay? So he's full-on Paddy, right? That means his mom's from Ireland and his dad is Irish-American who was born here. So he's considered a bright student, but drops out to help his family manage their farm during some turbulent times. Keep in mind, born in 1908. Not really a great time to have a portfolio on the stock market. But
he's hardscrabble upbringing.
For sure.
A farm in Wisconsin, and got a couple of brothers and stuff, but they're barely scraping by.
It's not good. He winds up going back to school at age 20, though. Now, Joe, people always say this. If I could go back to high school knowing what I know now, I'd do everything different.
Oh God, the things
I hate
would
that you're mocking
change.
me for that because I literally
What?
just said that last week.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't even go to my high school, like, at all. Just flip and just move out of state. I grew up in Kearney. It sounds like circus people went there, and it's so accurate. So
He ain't wrong. But Joe winds up going back to high school at age 20, earns his diploma, then immediately enters into a school known as Marquette. You know anything about Marquette?
Just a little.
Pretty popular school, all right. A hell of a NCAA tournament run they had a while back with a certain guy by the name of Dwayne Wade.
oh,
Good stuff over there, man. But so he winds up getting into Marquette, a
Good
scholarly school, very
Yep.
scholarly school. And he, while he's there, he's going to come away with a law degree. And keep in mind here, born in 1908, and by 1935, he gets admitted to the bar and begins an illustrious, although often dubious, career as a lawyer and a judge. So he's kicking ass and taking names right away. He's not doing, well, I'm going to try welding and then see what I really want to do with
so
my
he moved
life.
up the ladder, though, like from being a lawyer to the judge.
Well, he moves that's pretty quick, too. But just the fact that he's been admitted to the bar in 1935 after he had to go back to school to finish his high school diploma at age 20 is pretty impressive.
So that's a, 7-year span?
Well, it's even faster because he's born in 1908, and by 1935, he is a literal lawyer, a legit lawyer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, 1939 now, he's going to make his run at a bigger office. All right. This guy, if you pay attention to his careers, we're going to cover it. And if it seems like we're going fast, it's because we want you to know this, but this is not the meat of the story.
Right.
He makes his first move towards becoming a district attorney, a DA, right?
Yeah,
Now,
so he's only made a lawyer in 1935. He's admitted to the bar, so he's a brand new spanking new lawyer in 1935. And now by 1939, he's getting into politics. He's already gotten into politics and gets himself created as a district attorney.
Now, it would have been great because now would be the time in the show when I would throw to our guest, who was also a lawyer and a comedian, named Kevin Israel. But he canceled on me 10 minutes after I booked the studio time.
Oh.
So you're half a comedian and a 0% lawyer. Glad I could be here.
Yeah, are you feeling the love here?
Oh, it's so good. Joe was going to come hang out anyway. And I was like, Joe, guess what? You've just been promoted.
Oh, what a promotion.
So he gets himself into this DA position. This I thought was interesting. So if you want to lay the groundwork for what this guy's whole life is going to look like.
What year did he become the DA?
Well, he's attempting to do so in 1939. He's going to make his run at the office here.
He's been a lawyer for 4 years, and he's going
Trying to be a district
Boy
attorney.
wants some promotions, power.
Right.
He's very power hungry. Now, in order to get this, he's had a failed run beforehand at something like this. But now he decides he's going to actually engage in a little mudslinging. Okay, this becomes a lifelong practice for Mr. McCarthy, and he's using some false allegations to try to go a little bit crazier. He runs against the incumbent, meaning the person who's held the position, that had been serving for 24 years as the district attorney. The DA at the time was known as Edgar V. Werner. Okay, now if you want to, that's like a boring guy's kind of a name, right?
Edgar V. Werner?
Mm-hmm.
That's who was the district attorney for the past 24 years. That's who he's running against.
Okay.
It's the first time he's trying to gain the office of district attorney. He's going against the incumbent who's been serving. He's a fixture for the past 24 years.
Okay.
So now he's an older guy. In reality, he's 66, but McCarthy starts referring to him at age 74, right? By saying, "Oh, well, the guy's 74 years old, man." It's like it's almost like that thing when a politician, they always say if you repeat a lie enough times, it becomes true. So what's going to happen here with McCarthy is he just keeps calling, the old guy, yeah, he's 74 years old, blah blah blah, and he there's no one there to defend him. To say he's actually only 64, because there's no fact checking, there's no social media or really a press covering a district attorney thing
Barely
down in.
a newspaper.
Yeah, it's got to be true. I read it on the internet.
It's which always makes me laugh too because he takes. He's also noticing that there's a big backlog of cases that Werner hasn't presided over, if you will. So he's saying, oh, he's got so many cases backed up and he's an old man. And, and he knew that all the lawyers in town didn't like him. So the lawyers didn't like the judge. So he knew that now the lawyers are going to say, oh, well, this McCarthy fella, he might be kind of useful for us. So they use that and then they advance the idea that his age is going to be an issue and he can't hold the office anymore. And guess what, Kahuna? Shit worked. Yep.
Took it down.
Your district attorney, Joe McCarthy, is now the youngest circuit court judge in Wisconsin state history. Okay? And true to his word, McCarthy begins tackling the backlogs that were left by Werner and gave great care to cases that involved the welfare of children. Right? So if it had kids involved, Joe McCarthy was like, I'm going to make sure. Yeah, I can't wait. I want to make sure these kids' interests are taken care of. I'm a good guy. I got a big heart that way. If it didn't have kids involved, he's like, I don't know. Give me the Cliff Notes. You're gonna think
is that really that's really how he kind of operated?
Exactly how he did it.
Right. He'd get through these backlogged cases just by skimming over it and having other attorneys give me the briefs, give me the bullet on this, and we're gonna bum rush this thing right on.
But the second he mentioned kids, he was on board 100%.
Yeah, right.
Right. Now imagine pitching the Muppets to somebody, right, Kahuna? I'm just using this because it's your playground, if you will.
That's right.
And
It's your home field.
and you're sitting there and you've prepared this whole big thing, right? And then Joe McCarthy reads it and comes away with "Talking Frog, got it. I'm on board. All right, I understand now." And you're just like, "No, you missed all the nuance." He goes, "No, Talking Frog, keep going." All right.
I mean, it's not far off to actually how that show got made, but that's a whole other discussion. Continue.
He is our Wikipedia of these things. And by the way, plug the name of your podcast at the end too. We do have people that like to listen to stuff. LP, anything else before we move on here?
No, we're good.
All right. So he's now able to hold this office. And like we said, if it doesn't have kids involved, he takes literally the cliff notes. He goes, give me a note card saying the shit that is important to you about this case. And he would just go off of that. And insanely, it worked. He was able to rip through that backlog pretty effectively. But I would also say this. The last thing you want in your legal case, if it requires nuance, is shortcuts.
Yeah.
So the Wisconsin Supreme Court actually had to overturn a couple of his calls because he just dealt with it too shoddily. So McCarthy also, most of his verdicts are going to hold up with no consequences until 1941. So that is, if you're keeping track at home, that's about 2 years of him being the circuit court judge.
Yeah, he's in by 39, and now it's 41. So, yeah, no, he's got a short track record at this point. But.
Well, he gets this will be the first time in his life of something that's going to happen a few more times to him. He's officially censured for a pricing fix case in which he, quote, lost the evidence. Wow. All right. So it could just be his fault. You know, it could be anything like that. Could be that he knew something he wasn't supposed to know, and it was easier to take the slap on the wrist than, get in actual trouble. But it's important to mention this, that this would be, again, another part we'd throw to Kevin Israel to explain what this being censured means. And he officially texted me back, and he goes, pretty much it means what you have done is bad. We can't do anything, but we can publicly say that what you've done is bad.
Yeah, it's publicly letting people know that
You're an asshole.
You
but
screwed
can't
up.
Say
You screwed up, and you didn't screw up bad enough that we got to throw you out, but you definitely screwed up. So, take note. Not to the point where, again, we can oust you out of office, but it's a more than a slap on the wrist.
Yeah, Wisconsin's old school.
It's like a public HR write-up.
Yeah.
That's
Well said, Joey.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
Now, because of an old Wisconsin law, Joe McCarthy was then stripped down naked and paraded through the streets as people screamed, "Shame, shame, shame!" And it started over it wound up at Lambeau Field. Okay, so and then he had to do a Lambeau leap completely naked. But
Wearing cheese too, because he's from Wisconsin.
Yes,
so,
only
right.
a cheese
With
hat.
a chat.
That's right. He
The
was
rest
a
of the
farmer.
body
He was probably
naked.
making cheese his entire life.
Well, the year is now 1942.
42.
Yep.
Okay, I'm with you.
The Japanese, and by the way, I'm wrong about dates a lot. So when he jumped in there, I was like, did I fuck up again? 1942, the Japanese have bombed Pearl Harbor.
In 1941, December 7th, 1941.
Indeed.
Tiny skirmish.
And
Little brouhaha.
when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, there you go. Just go with it.
But the U.S. is now looking forward to this fight that it's involved with. McCarthy was excused from the draft due to his judicial appointment, but to his credit, he winds up joining the Marine Corps. All right. Supposedly, he was once chided by a friend and mentor for hesitating about joining. He's like, "Hey, why don't you join the Marines?" And McCarthy was a little nervous up front, and he hesitated for a second. And the guy responded with, "I thought I'm going to use this. This is in my act now. This is a great. What do you got? Shit in your blood?"
Whoa.
Yep, said that to him. And McCarthy goes, "I don't have shit in my blood. I'll join the Marines right now."
Wow.
And it worked, man. He wound up joining the Marines, as you guys know.
Don't be a pussy.
Yeah.
Just sign up.
Just the 1940s version of
I'm-
being a pussy.
Yeah.
You got shit in your blood?
Or as Bill Burr would say, "What are you?" So McCarthy, to his credit, takes this commission in the United States Marine Corps and works as an intel briefing officer for a dive bomber group in the Solomon Islands. Dad, Solomon Islands, nice quiet duty station.
Yeah,
Right?
no, not so much. Not so much. We're in the Pacific, and we're fighting the Japanese. Now, to take a commission, he was obviously college educated, so he could come in as an officer within the Marine Corps. I mean, he wasn't a grunt going through Paris Island or anything, but because of his education, they made him an officer, and he was in an intelligence briefing officer, as you said, in a dive bomber group. So
I want to ask this real quickly. It's not off track, but just to get an idea in the room. So when we always talk about commissioned versus enlisted, people get confused sometimes. We've clarified this in the past. Larry Burke has a degree, a 4-year degree. So if you were drafted, you would be going in as an officer, right? Well, not necessarily drafted, but
I would have that opportunity.
Correct. Kahuna, college credit-wise, what do you got?
Bachelor's degree.
Kahuna would be an officer, okay? This is what I was afraid of. Joe Weber. Joe Weber, college degree. Anything?
1 college credit, maybe.
1 college credit?
And it's a calculus, so I feel pretty smart about myself.
But it's like a good credit.
Yeah, it's like a good one. 0.
Make sure you mention that as your credits if I ever bring you up on stage. He's
Yes.
got 4 college credits.
What have you done?
got
Well,
creds.
I
If
had
you're
calculus.
bringing me up on stage, I'm doing pretty well.
It's a showcase. And myself, I would also be Joe and I would be grunts, and Kahuna and my father would be bossing us around. You guys would
As it should be.
leading us into combat. But
I'm okay with this arrangement.
I don't see the
feel
problem.
shafted immediately.
well, I'll tell you what, he's at a busy command right here, and he winds up. It was no slouch. It was no bullshit command. He winds up being a bullshit artist about it, but he flies legitimately 12 combat missions. In which he says that he volunteered as a tail gunner, but I think he said tail gunner observer, right, Dad?
Yeah, he was in this dive bomber squadron, if you will, and volunteered to fly these combat missions. Granted, and all credit to him for that, but he wasn't the actual tail gunner. He was an observer to that, which is a little detail that he wasn't the man behind the gun, but that was a little detail that he actually omitted when he was bullshitting about his military career later in life.
And you don't have to. It's like I always say about that. There's one famous picture that I think Joe Weber took of me and my favorite comedian of all time. I won't say his name, but I think you know who it was.
Exactly who it is.
And people assume I open for him and that I'm good friends with him. Talking to the mic a little bit more. But I don't have to correct people that I don't open with him and hang out with him all the time. But people thought we did, so that was pretty awesome.
I thought you were best friends.
That's Joe took the lie on that one. Now, also not for nothing, Uncle Dan was a tail gunner in World War II. Your uncle,
Yeah.
and he was once asked to leave the boardwalk because he was winning the games too much.
Yeah, that
Fresh
was
out of tail gunner
That
school.
was a family story that just comes out of tail gunner school and is on the boardwalk where you get the gun and you got to shoot the star out to win the prize. And I think if he
He
was
was too
finally
good.
paid just to go away because you're winning too much
The
shit.
ducks going back and forth with the targets on them. He's
Yeah.
just wailing on each one.
Yeah.
What was left of the ducks? That was on Uncle Dan's. Uncle Dan's plane had a couple of Nazi planes taken down, and then also about 18 ducks on the side of it painted on the fuselage. So,
Uncle Dan was the real deal, though. He wasn't like a Joe McCarthy tail gunner. He was a true tail gunner in a B-17 and one of the first Americans to go across, stationed in England in the 8th Army during the Second World War. So he was the real deal. And,
Oh, McCarthy was bullshitting?
well, no,
McCarthy was
he
bullshit.
did
Uncle
actually-
Dan was not.
No. I wasn't saying that at all.
Yeah, no. McCarthy did fly these missions, but what he elaborated on as being part of his missions was bullshit, and actually it became kind of synonymous. His nickname became Tail Gunner Joe, which was kind of like a mock that, like, yeah, you're full of shit. Yeah,
I think that's what I'd call the movie. I think that's what I would call the movie.
Well,
Tail Gunner Joe, yeah.
You'll be excited for the casting couch on this one too, because
I already got
we
my
got
pick.
many people to
yeah.
portray here. Yep.
So I thought this was worth noting is that he does go on to he gives himself stolen valor, which if you don't know, that's when people pretend they're in the military. I've met 1 or 2 people, and you got to realize those people are mentally ill. They're not right. Because I've had someone lie to me and say that they were in the Marines right now, and I said, "Why do you have a beard?" And the guy was just like, and they dive down on it, man. But now this guy was actually legit in the Marines. The 12 missions all of a sudden gets blown up to 32 missions, and he winds up writing his own awards up to be sent up to give himself an award. Like, imagine if Kahuna won the big Kahuna Awards. It's just an honor to be nominated, really.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank the Academy, consisting of Big Kahuna.
Yeah, he writes himself up to receive several awards, and it was written up by Joe himself. Joe's a great guy. He did all these valor, this valor mission and everything else. And well, who's signing it or who's putting you in for it? Joe.
Here's the best part. He would slide his own awards in with awards that he was preparing for other people so that the officers who were signing off on him wouldn't really give it the time. Like, oh, it's just a signature here. Yeah, sure, got that. And he literally gave himself the Distinguished Flying Cross, which he may or may not have legitimately earned, but certainly not a good look when you're writing it yourself. And in 1952, the Marine Corps awarded him several other flying medals and air medals due to his political influence, which is coming, by the way. We're about to explain how he becomes so influential. Just out of their sheer lack of a desire to make an enemy out of him.
Yeah, every time I read that, though, I had a flashback to MASH, that Klinger is handing Sherman Potter a whole stack of papers to sign. Sherman T. Potter, Sherman T. Potter, Sherman T. Potter. Just sign your name, sign your name, sign your name. And what's on the bottom? Oh, an award from McCarthy to win the Distinguished Flying Cross. Guy was bullshit.
That's what I always used to do this to my chief in the Navy. I would start anytime I had a chit that I need to have routed to have a weekend off or to ask for a special liberty or something like that. Mm-hmm. I would always go up to my Chief, do you have a second? Can I talk to you? And he'd be like, what is it, Burke? What happened? And I was like, I got a DUI over the weekend. And then he'd go, Burke, are you kidding me right now? I was like, yes, actually, I just need you to sign this chit. And that way the chit was so much. He's like, oh, fine, I'll sign that. Jeez, I thought you had a DUI. I thought I was about to have to answer for this.
So then that way, whatever he was signing, it was just like, oh, it's all good.
That's a whole lot better than what you were originally asking me for.
It's like a teenager saying, like, I got a girl pregnant. No, wait, just kidding. I could only crash the car. Like, yeah.
Or as I said the other day, good news is, Dad, I killed a spider. Bad news is, bay window's gone.
That's right.
I feel you on that, KP, except mine would be, good news, I killed the spider. Bad news, we got to move.
Because I burned the house down.
It's now whether or not McCarthy is a true Patriot War hero is oddly irrelevant sometimes in this story. You'd think that would be the crux of the story here today, but the military was a way for him to pad his resume and this war hero status he comes up with,
right?
Which he, again, there's some truth to it, but he embellished like a motherfucker. So that's going to be front and center for his next endeavor. What did we say? Becomes a lawyer, and within 4 years, you spotted, Joe? Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, he's got to be a DA? Yeah, this guy gets a high school diploma. He goes, I want law school next. This guy's crazy. So his next move, Congress.
Yeah, he's an overachiever for sure.
Mm-hmm. Dairy farmer to congressman.
Charger. Yeah.
You almost admire. That's a little bit of just the American dream. Let's also be honest there.
I mean, you're not wrong. Like his climb in that respect, as far as like becoming a lawyer and doing all that type of stuff, is admirable. But then like the embellishment of the military career.
Oh, just you wait, Kahuna.
Wait, what do you mean?
Oh boy.
Wait, what do you fake being a lawyer?
While he's still in the Marines, good old Joe McCarthy's getting ready to make his move towards Capitol Hill, right?
Yeah, that's in 1944. So not that things are totally winding down, but I mean, he's already looking to post-war. What's going to happen after this whole this little brouhaha is over?
So he's setting up campaign for after the fact.
Well, absolutely.
Correct.
And, that's not something that's completely new to American politics.
Right.
How many Civil War generals were only in there because they were a political appointees so that they would have a better political life experience after the war was over. Mm-hmm. Same shit is happening during the Second World War. We're always going to have that.
Yeah.
Are you saying nepotism, Dad? Is that what you're saying?
No. No.
I like the word nepotism, Dad. Back
Dad,
to back.
yeah,
That was
right.
There's for a reason.
Real
So he starts making his move towards Capitol Hill, like we said, and he's got a couple early failures. So Joe winds up going back to what was reliable. What got him elected to the circuit judge position in the first place? A little good old-fashioned mudslinging, right? So he's palling up to the right people now. He gets the blessing of the local Wisconsin political machine, also known as Brett Favre, and he begins smearing his opponent. So Wisconsin is this weird, odd kind of a state where you don't have moderates. You don't get me wrong, you do. There's absolutely people that do, but Wisconsin
at the time. Let's put it at
the
time.
Again, we're not a political show. You guys know that, but in this time currently, still, people will agree to this, that Wisconsin houses both the absolute farthest left you can go and the absolute farthest right you can go. And yet they all get together on Sundays and cheer for the Packers.
That's right.
It's a very curious state.
Of the Vikings.
Cheeseheads all.
So they're interesting that way. But in the election of 46 now, McCarthy's able to pull off an upset and unseats a 3-term incumbent. That's another incumbent now that he's beating. This guy's name was Robert La Follette Jr.
La Follette.
Lafayette. Lafayette, whatever.
Went a little too French there.
I'm very good with accents.
Oui.
But he was hated by the communist-led electrical workers union, who ironically threw their support behind McCarthy, who will come to be known as the most famous staunch anti-communist in the history of the United States. All right. McCarthy smears La Follette for not serving his country in the war, as he had. He goes, well, I'm Joe McCarthy. I served my country in the war. La Follette, he didn't do anything. He just stayed home, except for the fact that La Follette was 46 when Pearl Harbor happened, meaning he would be 50 around this time. So,
yeah, so he's trying to smear a guy that was 46 years old in 1941. So
yep.
Is he going to be one of the first guys to go jump down to the recruiting office?
I just don't understand politics. It's so bad now.
And McCarthy's what, in his late 30s at this point?
Oh, I would say, let's see, born in 1908. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't make me do math on my own show.
I had to ask so no one would ask me.
I got that calculus credit.
Yeah,
Leave that to
we've
me.
got this guy here to do that heavy math.
Calculus, baby. So now he's smearing him with that. He also accused him of war profiteering by saying that he stayed at home and was making his investments. So while part of this is true, and we're going to find the McCarthy. All right. So in the movie The Last Boy Scout with Bruce Willis, right? There's a line they say about his character where they go, "You don't understand the way he lies. Every lie has 10% truth to it," and that is what Senator Joe McCarthy becomes famous for. Yes, it is true. La Follette did not serve in the war. Was he age appropriate? No. Okay.
That's right. That's why he didn't serve, because he was too old.
Right. Was it profitable for him to stay home? Did he make investments during his time when McCarthy was overseas fighting? Yes, but they were nowhere near the profits that Joe McCarthy made when he was making investments from shady dealings that they're not really sure where the money came from while he was overseas. However it works, Joe McCarthy wins the seat and quietly serves his first 3 years in Congress. He was known as a great party guest, okay? I think Joe Weber can tell you, after shows at a certain comedy club down the Jersey Shore, if I've been drinking that night and I know that I have an Uber ride to take home later, I get quite charming at the end of the show.
He is the most solid wingman of all time. It's a beautiful thing.
It was up there, man. There's been a couple of people that are upset with me about that to this day, but Joe had... what I had back then, not you, Joe McCarthy. Joe had what I used to have, which is a very clear alcohol problem. So, but he was a charming drunk, right? Which serves him very well at these social events in D.C. and shit like that. You got to go, oh, we'll get McCarthy up here, man. I'll get a few in him. Picture McCarthy as like Chris Farley hanging out at an after party for Saturday Night Live. That's how I picture him.
It's amazing.
You know, when you're a communist in a van down by the river.
I've never wanted to hang out with a politician so bad in my life.
Well, look at his eyebrows, too, because McCarthy has some tough-looking eyebrows. For an Irishman, man, he looks like he's Armenian. And let me tell you, I know I hung out with both of them a lot. But he's a quiet guy during the day. The reason why they're saying he's a drunk, by the way, because I'll say this, I'll be very honest with you. He keeps to his reputation as a moderate Republican, and he's working heavily towards labor reforms, which is what the people of Wisconsin voted for him for. Keep in mind, he got supported by the electrical workers union. So now here's the crazy part. Take a look at that guy. His picture's up. Then brows are on point. Okay, he's got a little Scorsese action going.
It's like a Tony Soprano of the 40s.
Yes, it's a well, he's also a booze bag. And here's what's interesting. As anyone who's a true alcoholic can tell you, the nighttime when the cocktails are flowing, that's the best time to be around an alcoholic. They're fun, they're outgoing. Then in the morning, they're very quiet because they're hungover. And then they get angry and combative and confused during the day. And that is exactly, to a T, Joe McCarthy's reputation his first 3 years in Congress. All right? These angry outbursts will happen where it kind of confuses the people that are around him. He's kind of alienating himself from, they're like, listen, if it's a party and McCarthy's there, I'll go. But I don't really want to deal with this guy during the day. I'm not stopping by his office to see how he's doing. And he's largely outcast from his D.C. coworkers. And I shit you not, Kahuna, he is voted by a poll to be the worst senator currently in D.C.
Our Joe?
Yep, good old Joey McCarthy.
Wow.
So, an odd
He's
note.
number one.
Yeah, number one worst ever.
Number one loser.
Indeed. Now, an odd note here. You want to talk about something weird. This one threw me for a loop to read this. McCarthy wanted a very unpopular stance that he took was he wanted the death sentences of some SS prisoners of war commuted. And these SS prisoners, he wanted, again, this would be where Israel would explain what commuted means. That means not carried out.
Not carried out, yeah. They're not going to fulfill the sentence.
Correct. So you remember the rest of this story?
No, go ahead. I'll jump in when I...
Okay, you got eye boogers too. Fix them.
I got eye boogers.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Can the listeners at home see my eye boogers?
Well, listen, someday we're going to be on film and I need you looking sharp, okay?
That'll never happen. That's Mission Impossible.
McCarthy gains 0 friends from this move, but he decides that because he doesn't want these SS prisoners, these literal Nazis, who committed an atrocity against American POWs, he doesn't want them given the death penalty because he feels like that their statements were made under torture and duress, right? Incredibly ironic for what's about to happen here with this guy. This is just how big of a fucking hypocrite old Joe McCarthy's about to be.
Yeah, these SS guys were charged with massacring American POWs. And then he's coming to their defense, so he didn't make a whole lot of friends. And again, you got to remember the times here. This is after only a few years after the Second World War, so the memories of the war are fresh in everybody's mind.
And he fought in the Pacific too, so he probably didn't have. And he's from Wisconsin, huge German population. You wonder what the motivating factors were, but he went on record saying that it was because they were. He felt that it was improper. He thought that the German soldiers were getting bullied, that kind of a thing, right? So get a load of this. Welcome to 1950. February 9th, 1950. Joe McCarthy is about to become a household name. All right. So
for better or for worse.
It starts off for real good. Here's the thing. We always talk about this with power. However long people can hang on to power. It's more impressive the longer someone can hold on to it. You have to handle it in a certain way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's people who are very bombastic and even gregarious, one might say, and a couple other words I don't know what they mean. But
what's the Batman quote? It's you live long enough to be, or you're
you live long enough to see yourself become the villain,
or you're the hero long enough. But if you stay the hero too long, you're going to become the villain out of necessity.
Yeah, you guys are butchering that, but I like what you're doing.
Yeah,
we got the gist.
You either die the hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Why didn't you freaking say it then?
Because I wanted to see two comic book nerds bash each other's brains in over it, while the fucking longshoreman over here gets it right.
Listen, Christian Bale's not my favorite
often.
Batman. Okay.
Oh, man.
No, that was a good quote though. Correct. Yeah. So McCarthy gives a sensational speech.
Yeah, we just do a little lead into the speech, though. All right, because it is February 9th, but February 9th in 1950 was also known as Lincoln Day, and the Republicans did this whole big national tour, if you will, that different senators, different congressmen, different high levels of the Republican Party would go to various cities on a speaking tour to try to boost the party. And Lincoln is probably one of the most famous Republicans of all time. So, some of them are going to New York, some of them are going to Chicago, some are going to L.A. And Senator Joe McCarthy, who was just voted one of the worst senators of all time, right, or worst senators in the present Congress, he's on this speaking tour, but his Lincoln Day tour is in Wheeling, West Virginia, and he's the invited speaker to the Republican Women's Club in Wheeling, West Virginia. So he's not exactly on the same level as some of the other Republicans that are going to New York, Chicago, and so on and so forth. So, but he makes a big splash in Wheeling, West Virginia.
It's like doing some weird road gigs. It's always great to do well at a club in New York City. It's always great to earn the kind words from people you admire. But sometimes you just have to kill really hard in Tom's River at an Elks Club, right? And that's exactly what old Joey Mack does here for us. There's no official recording of this speech, by the way, and the revisions to the accuracy are sometimes made by McCarthy himself, other times by fact checkers, and it gets a little convoluted here. But this speech attracted a shitload of attention because McCarthy is holding up a piece of paper in his hand as he's waving it up and down, and he's claiming that the State Department itself is full of communists, right? And that his list that he has contains over 200 names that have been reported to the Secretary of State, who at the time was Dean Acheson, who under President Harry Truman, by the way, FDR has since passed, and Harry S. for nothing, as Grammy would call him, of known communists within the government. Okay, now this is spooky times here. We got the Red Scare going on, as we've covered in great detail in other episodes, but most studiously, the previous Patreon episode in the Rosenbergs.
In the Rosenbergs.
Right? You did a nice job with that.
Yeah. So we're in 1950, and again, you have to go through the zeitgeist of the times that it's post World War II. Who's the big fear factor now? Well, we already kicked the shit out of Germany, and the Japanese have already surrendered to us.
Shit, we're almost friends with both of them at this point.
Yeah, we're trying to take care of them, and we're trying to resurrect really Europe from the terrible atrocities that took place and the bombings and everything else in Europe, and we're trying to bring Japan back. But the big fear of the country is now not Germany or Japan, but it's the Soviets, it's the Russians. That the time frame of 1950, we're in the Cold War, what had become known as the Cold War. There's all kinds of stuff going on. Well, even going back to at the close of the Second World War, 1945, the big Allied countries came together to decide, what are we going to do once this thing is over? So there's the Yalta Conference, which was the biggies: Winston Churchill, Joe Stalin, and FDR, and some of the others are trying to come together, and they're really dividing up Europe. That, all right, you're going to get that section of Europe, you're going to get that section of Europe, and everybody's coming to the agreement as to what's going to happen once we finally do defeat the Germans and defeat the Japanese. Then immediately the Soviet Union goes rogue on us, because there was not real good feelings with the Soviets at any point during the war. Because again, you got to remember that the Soviets were allied with Germany at the start of the war, and it wasn't until Hitler invaded Germany that things kind of turned around a little bit. But now the war is over, and Soviet Union installs this puppet government in Romania. They install this provisional government, quote unquote, in Yugoslavia, in Poland, and all over the place, that they're now coming under direct Soviet control, more or less.
Yeah, anyone with a very hot women's volleyball team, that was where they were.
And gymnasts too. Yeah. And gymnasts.
You say Lithuania? Huh?
Yeah.
He's like, we got to recruit for the Olympics.
Right.
We got to get these on board.
Someone named Nastya Lukin is coming.
I mean, so things are we're very dubious as far as the Soviets are concerned, and it's only getting worse and worse every year that goes by.
It's not just them either, right? China too now.
They come into this whole thing, this whole communist threat. I mean, because this Cold War that we're going to go through the 1950s and 60s was really the second Cold War, because we had a whole communist fear in the early 1900s, when we had all these anarchists blowing up shit in New York and Washington and everything. FDR himself barely escaped a bombing attempt by some of the anarchists when Russia first went communist back in the 1912
that would have been the fall of the Tsars.
Yeah, the fall of the Tsars. In 1945, before the war is even over, Roosevelt dies. So all these agreements that Roosevelt and Churchill and Stalin had are now only coming to light to Vice President Harry Truman. Harry Truman takes the presidency because Roosevelt dies. Truman, only upon Roosevelt's death, has any idea of what these diplomatic efforts were. This is all in secrecy. And it's the first time that Truman becomes knowledgeable of the atomic bomb. Even the freaking Manhattan Project was in total.
We got a what?
We got a bomb that can.
What happens if I hit this button?
Yeah, really, and that's where he first comes into that. So, and it's in 45, and April 12th, Roosevelt dies. April 6th, the Soviets then finally jump into, or excuse me, April 8th, the Soviets finally jump into Manchuria because the Soviets are saying, well, shit, we've already defeated Germany. We've already had VE Day. Now we're going to go into Japan and defeat them. They're the last ones that are still fighting against us. So Soviets want to take part of that.
They were
shit.
afraid of FDR, man.
Yeah, they were afraid of FDR. They didn't know who they were dealing with Harry Truman. Harry Truman orders the bombing, the first bomb to be dropped. So the first atomic bomb is dropped. 2 days later, the Soviets jump into Manchuria. They're like,
Wow.
holy shit! If we're going to be chopping up what Japan had captured, we want Manchuria for the same reason the Japanese jumped into Manchuria in the first place, because of the natural resources and everything else. So if we're going to be, dividing up the pie, we better jump in on this shit. So the Soviets jump into Manchuria. August 9th, right, 2 days or 3 days after that, Truman gives the word to drop the second bomb because the Japanese still haven't responded to the first atomic bomb drop. That, like, hey, dudes.
Dear Slim, I wrote you, but you still ain't calling.
There's a lot of feeling, too, that they dropped the first atomic bomb, and one of the driving forces with that is so that we can now demonstrate to the Soviets, hey, we got some really big shit here. We got the A-bomb and you don't. So if you guys want to play games here, and the reason why the second bomb was dropped in such quick succession is to prove to the Soviets this wasn't just a one and done kind of a thing. We got more of this shit. Fortunately, we didn't have more than that shit in the arsenal at that particular point. We were kind of shot our load with the second bomb, but the Soviets
didn't know that.
The Soviets didn't know that. The Japanese surrender. The Japanese surrender to the United States to Douglas MacArthur, and MacArthur does a great job of keeping the Soviets out of the whole surrender of Japan, so that they weren't going to take a part of that pie, coming in at the last minute kind of thing, finally fighting against the Japanese. But, through 46, Joseph Stalin in 46 makes this big speech that, capitalism and imperialism is going to have to make a war eventually, because these two are not going to get along. That eventually, so Stalin is really calling us out in 46. In 47, Poland becomes a communist state. Harry Truman declares the Truman Doctrine that we're not going to allow communism to go any further than.
Did you ever hear the Polish light bulb joke about communism?
No.
How many Poles does it take to change a light bulb? It's all of our light bulb.
It's all of our light bulb. It belongs to everybody. The United States starts to back Greece and Turkey because they're afraid that Greece and Turkey is going to go under communism control. So, there's a definite fear here that communism is not going to stop with what we had at the end of the Second World War. That they're just going to keep right on rolling and take through the whole thing. And then by 49, now the Soviets explode their first atomic bomb. So, and that factors
way ahead of schedule too, by the way.
Yeah, way ahead of schedule, because they figured, well, they're eventually going to be able to catch up. But, they caught up to us technologically with the A-bomb sooner than we had expected. Whether the Rosenbergs figured into that or not is another debate, but now the Soviets have that. And then, there's a Greek Civil War. The 1950, we have Joe McCarthy declaring now evidence in Wheeling, West Virginia, that there's communists in the State Department. Like, holy shit, we're being invaded here, slowly and surely. And
just like all those other governments that you mentioned before.
Exactly.
Another point too, by the way, just to make it, is that because then we do got to get back into Joe himself, but this is similar. This is the second Red Scare, like you said, Dad, because the first Red Scare was when the anarchists were coming over, and that's why Sacco and Vanzetti had to get the death penalty as an example to stop the anarchist shit that's going on over here.
We are not fucking around and just like,
right.
We're dead for that.
We're putting this down right now. Oh, and another little tidbit too, that there was a Russian working in the Soviet embassy up in Canada that defects and provides proof to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police that there's a Soviet spy ring operating in Canada and the U.S. So, I mean, there's fact-based stuff going on here that the Soviets are trying to make inroads into our governments, into Canada and into the United States.
So what did we say about McCarthy, though? 10% truth to the rest of his bullshit.
Right, and
works.
he's making this speech, like you said, in Wheeling, West Virginia, before the Republican Women's Committee, and he's waving this piece of paper that I have this list of over 200 names of communists that are working in the State Department. Well, that list was, like you say, 10% fact-based. That 4 years previous to that, there was a list put together by the State Department of suspected or people that should be further reviewed as to their allegiance to the United States, kind of a thing. Many of them have already died or departed or whatever, left the State Department and everything else. So there is a tinge of truth to what he was saying.
Is there an overlap between those two lists? Or
Yeah, and that was what everybody wanted to know, and he wasn't providing that. There's speculation that he was just waving a blank piece of paper around that I have the list. Nobody's allowed to look at the list, but I have the list.
It's mine and mine alone.
There's a comparison I have to make here just because it sets up perfectly. All right, no one knows shit about the French Revolution, but there was a guy, Maximilien Robespierre, I believe his name was, who was like the intellectual leader of everything, and he wound up. The French Revolution, if you need to know how successful it was, it ends in a reign of terror, and then their new republic gets taken over by Napoleon. So not exactly, the 4th of July. However, they still try to celebrate it that way. But Robespierre, there's so many things with him and with McCarthy that in terms of them explaining just kind of where they're at with everything, that he says, oh, and I know I have a list of people that are traitors to the cause, and I'm going to come out with that list tomorrow. And there's so many people who are like, dude, he makes up whatever he wants on this list. We got to kill this motherfucker before he tries to implicate one of us. So now these people that are just nervous about getting put on the list orchestrate Robespierre's death. That really does come to follow McCarthy. Wouldn't you say that? Is that
Absolutely,
fair?
yeah.
All right. I want to hop into
many parallels.
want to hop into what's happening here now, if we can, real quickly. Excellent setup for it. I think we're good to go now. We're on highway time now, fellas. All right.
Sorry, but
I feel like a history major now. Thank you, LP.
I just thought it was appropriate to, it's not just like he's waving his list around.
There was some legitimacy.
There's a lot of
to it.
shit going on in the world that
made
this current news.
And believable.
Yeah.
Well, it takes off, man. If you want to talk about going, quote, viral, this pretty much goes viral. And they're talking about how his list has dropped down nowadays. Now it's down to, sometimes it's 50, sometimes it's 108 names. But McCarthy's using terms like people who are inclined towards communism or communist sympathizers, or my favorite line, card-carrying commies.
That's right.
All right?
I got the membership
So
card,
it went
man.
from a full-on list of like, these are absolutes to, okay, maybe they like support it a little bit.
Yeah, and again, too, I heard there's a couple of interesting, because we're going to set my father up for a layup with a hatchet man of sorts for McCarthy that he's going to go into for a second. But in response to the public support for McCarthy and also the fear of a cabal going on where the government's being overthrown from within, Congress launches the United States Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs to conduct a full investigation. The hearings were an opportunity for the furious Democrats. By the way, not a political show. Democrats and Republicans, they don't always mean the same thing in a modern sense that they do at
Two
the time.
wings on the same bird, people. All right, let's go.
I like it, buddy. I like it. That was
That's right, and it's the shit bird.
Was that Smedley Butler? Was that Smed that said that, or was that Orson Welles said
dodo.
that? I think it was Orson said that on a speech later in life. But it was definitely something we covered on the show. So the Democratic subcommittee chairman was a Democrat from Maryland by the name of Millard Tidings. All right.
Fancy.
Yeah, who looks like the dean in every Animal House type movie. All right.
You're on double secret probation.
Exactly. So what he says is he's like the head of this committee for the Democrats, and the Democrats are furious because they can't believe that, like, how careless this guy McCarthy's being. And so he gives a line to the rest of the Democrats. He goes, listen, we're going to have you give me McCarthy for 3 days during these hearings, and I'll make sure he never shows his face in the Senate again. Unfortunately, Tidings underestimates just how full of shit Joe McCarthy is.
Right.
All right.
And how well he can sling that shit.
He's like a performer almost. Okay. It's he gets up there. Picture like a Vic DiBitetto type guy throwing out the anger and the it's nonstop, and you're like, man, this is powerful what we're seeing here. You know,
he's going to be our savior from the communists. I mean, he's passionate and he's enraged.
I'd like to know like what his end game was too. What was his goal of like all this? Because I know he died, quote unquote, relatively young. But like, was he just gonna bullshit his way up to the top? Was that kind of his goal?
Honestly,
or?
I feel like he believed that the cabal, as you said, was a real deal. So I think that was his end game, just make sure that did not happen.
I don't think that's really quite accurate. I kind of think that he was more like, we got to come up with something here for the ladies of Wheeling, West Virginia. And he was putting this out there, and he was surprised at the media storm that he created. Because I did find some research that when he got back to his office, and like his secretary was saying, like, this media group and this newspaper and that are calling and want to know more stuff. And he's like, holy shit, maybe this story's, maybe this bullshit's got legs, that we can.
Here's something interesting to think about. That during the guys, again, we're not a political show, but an example would be, okay, so the idea of power is being able to run for office, right? The idea of absolute power is to run someone for office. Mm-hmm. If you're really a shot caller, then you get to do that. So McCarthy's power in Washington, going from literally voted the worst, all right, and being a relatively quiet guy who's only fun to have a drink with, to he's on his rise now to become the most powerful man in Washington, D.C. 1,000% true here, by the way. Check this out. This is ridiculous. Tidings underestimates the impassioned speech. McCarthy is, to quote my father, able to baffle him with his bullshit. All right? Puts on a performance of sort, and he starts changing the names of the targets on his list. He now singles out 9 specific names that he goes on to terrorize the rest of his political career. Okay? So it's just like, oh, that guy, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you.
You're cool, fuck you, and I'm out.
Exactly.
That's right.
Now, some of these people...
Drop the mic.
Yeah. These are the people within the State Department, right? Except some of them never worked for the State Department at all. Most of them no longer did, and the evidence against these people wasn't exactly as damning as McCarthy's speeches made him sound. But the party lines are split on each vote on the hearings. The Democrats are saying, this is all bullshit. I can't believe we're even hearing this. And the Republicans are saying, there's some truth here, and you guys are not paying any attention to that. So it's kind of, they're both right, but they're both wrong at the same time. Dems hated McCarthy, but not all Dems, oddly enough. I'm excited about this part. As a pop culture guru, Joe Weber, you're going to like this one. As the kahuna himself, you ready for your jaw drop?
Ready.
Okay. McCarthy, a staunch anti-communist and an Irish Catholic. This allows him to cozy up to a certain family, one very, very powerful family that is also anti-communist and Catholic in American politics. Take a guess. I feel like you have it already. Say
Kennedys?
It. Yep. He cozies up to the Kennedys.
Wow.
Him and Pop Joe Sr., become good friends. All right. The shared bond of Catholicism and their hatred of commies make them fast friends. How good, you ask? On to McCarthy's legal team during some hearings is a young Robert F. Kennedy.
Wow.
RFK is brought in, right? One of his first major jobs. Get this one, too. JFK would also go on to never attack or say a bad word about him, even though he was persona non grata after he fell from grace. Mm-hmm. Joe McCarthy is godfather to Kathleen Kennedy. All right. He was brought regularly up to the Kennedy compound in Hyannis, right, to go hang out there.
And Joe McCarthy was godfather to Kathleen Kennedy.
Yes. Did I
Not
say that
Joe
right?
Kennedy.
No, okay. Sorry
I just wanted to make sure everybody's got their
Good
Joes
catch.
right. There's
Yeah.
Joe Kennedy, Papa Joe, but then there's Joe McCarthy, who's now the godfather
Here
of
comes the
Kathleen
hit.
Kennedy.
Here it comes. Joe also dated both. Joe McCarthy dated both of Joe Kennedy's daughters at one time or another. Okay, not at the same time, but like I'll go out, I'll take out this girl for a couple of times. But those daughters being named Patricia and Eunice. Eunice obviously doesn't go on. Neither one marries Joe McCarthy. Eunice would go on to marry a guy by the name of Sergeant Shriver. Okay, they would go on to have a daughter named Maria, who would marry Arnold
Maria
Schwarzenegger.
Shriver.
Wow.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is the Kevin Bacon to McCarthyism.
Wow.
Yeah.
What? Oh my God.
I'll give you guys a second on that one, but we got more hits coming.
I am
And
shook
Sergeant
visibly.
Shriver, his full name was Robert Sergeant Shriver. It wasn't Sergeant like Army Sergeant Shriver. That was his first name, Sergeant Shriver. That's what he would go with. but he was also a politico that went on with JFK later on. He's really the guy that was responsible for the Peace Corps, for the Job Corps, for the Head Start program, and for very instrumental in the war on poverty. So, Joe McCarthy was playing with some pretty heavy hitters within the Kennedy clan.
Wow.
Yep. And by the way, he's a Republican, and they're lifelong Democrats. But it's interesting to note a couple other things here. Good to have those friends in high places, right? Because one person he's not friends with at all, Truman fucking hates him. Can't stand this guy.
Understandably.
Truman and McCarthy hated each other because McCarthy hated former General George Marshall, who was Truman's previous Secretary of State, called him and Truman soft on commies. And then he kept saying lines like the Republicans hadn't had someone in as president in over 20 years. 20 years rather at that time, and he kept calling Democrats 20 years of treachery and just being traitors, pretty much straight up. So he's given a whole thing. He blames Marshall for letting China fall, and that would publicly say that Truman should be impeached. Okay, so these two guys, they got a beef going. All right, this is like I don't want to give any political modern reference to it because then people get weird about the politics involved, but it's definitely. It's a big swinging dick in the checks and balances of political power here. Yeah. So Truman responds, by the way, by referring to Joe McCarthy as the very best weapon the Kremlin has at its disposal. So he's saying, like, you're doing more work for Russia than Russia's doing itself, man. You're a real piece of shit.
Yeah, McCarthy's doing more to undermine American foreign policy than the Kremlin is. Mm-hmm. And again, this whole Red Scare, this just continues on and on because now China falls to the communists. It's the whole creation of Taiwan and the People's Republic. North Korea invades South Korea. Again, the communist kind of backed thing. North Vietnam and South Vietnam. So, I mean, we're losing ground all over the place. We're losing ground to the communists in Europe and in Asia and everything else. So this whole Red Scare, this whole communist scare just continues on and on. And so, things are heating up more and more in the Cold War.
Now, here's the good thing. A senator can have his seat for life pretty much, right? As long as you keep winning your elections. The term limits is going to be on the presidency. So eventually Truman's going to be out, and guy who's coming in happens to be the former Supreme Allied Commander, right? You know who we're talking about?
Supreme Allied Commander?
Yeah, who's a big swinging dick. Think about the General President, from World War II.
I like Ike.
Eisenhower, baby.
Yeah.
So Eisenhower's coming in now. He's got a better relationship with McCarthy, even campaigns with him in Wisconsin. But even while he's publicly, he goes, I don't really like how Joe does things, but he's really okay once you get to know him. That kind of a keep your distance kind of a thing with him. And the two of them wind up getting into it after Ike is put into office. And they asked him, they said, because now McCarthy's going after him saying 21 years of treachery because he's labeling, Eisenhower as a weak Republican. And they asked Eisenhower, they said, why don't you ever respond to Senator McCarthy's attacks? And he goes, I don't really want to get down in the gutter with that guy. So that is, that's how you, Eisenhower's the man. The more you look at him, he really was.
I don't want to stoop to his level.
He said, who?
Yeah. McCarthy, again, strong public speaker, though, capitalizing on this public fear of a red infiltration and enemies within. That's what his speech became known as, the enemies within speech. And he's using this subcommittee that he's the chair of as his kind of bully pulpit, where he's roughing people up. There's a lot of stuff that gets mentioned on it. He's almost got like a Puritan preacher, like, and hell will open up kind of a vibe to him. But here's one thing I got to mention, though, is that McCarthy's actions and associates often get confused with HUAC, the House of Affairs of, HUAC is the House of Un-American Affairs Committee or something like that. Mm-hmm. And that's like loyalty tests, which is a lot of shit that people on both parties, if you talk to, are openly against on stuff like that. The HUAC was started in 1938 and was heavily influenced by this week's loserception, J. Edgar Hoover of the FBI. So,
right, what's Hoover doing?
What didn't Hoover do? You were on that episode.
Yeah.
This is J. Edgar Hoover's America. It really is. His blueprint is all over the place here, man. But that was in order to investigate people with curious loyalties or ties to communist or fascist ideas, particularly within the government. books by authors are now going to be deemed problematic, all right? And there's going to be certain plays that are going to get banned, like that play The Cradle Will Rock that Orson Welles wanted to perform, right? These things are getting banned, and a lot of that is by HUAC because they're saying, oh, these are detrimental to American values and stuff like that.
This is where a lot of the people in Hollywood were put on a blacklist as well.
Which will be another episode, by the way.
Your suspicion of being investigated by HUAC was pretty much a death knell to your career.
Oh, yeah. He's on the list. That's the one list you don't want to be on. But when HUAC gets disbanded, by the way, finally we got rid of that. Now its duties are transferred modernly to the House Judiciary Committee. So if you ever put on C-SPAN, you've watched sort of HUAC. All right. But yeah, a lot of these things are happening here. Eisenhower even makes I'll get into that in a second. But McCarthy's group that he's a part of is he's the chairman on the Senate Committee of Joint Operations. And he's also got a spot on the Senate Permanent Subcommittee of Personal Investigations, which he uses as his own playground to just bully the shit out of people. I don't like, Kahuna was late today. Must be because he's a communist.
That's right. You had to
How do
stop
you know?
him.
Oh, that
Pledge
means I'm a
allegiance.
communist every day for work.
Yeah,
Damn.
Joe Weber screwed up my intro when he was bringing me on stage at a comedy club. Probably because he's a communist.
Oh, I am definitely a communist then for multiple comedians.
We're about to set you up for a layup here, LP, if you're ready. And we want the brief notes on them. We can't go, we don't have the liberty of going crazy on the time with them. But who is Joe McCarthy without a hatchet man, right?
Right. He's got to have a number two. Every number one's got to have a number two. Now, Joe McCarthy is badass number one, and he's searching out all those damn commies.
So if you look into the Soviets, right, you see Lenin, right? That Lenin comes into power and he's the one leading the charge with that. Then Lenin dies, right? And then you bring in Papa Joe Stalin, who is known as the Georgian Butcher.
Right.
Okay. So in that relationship, you have the guy who's got the ideas that's running the policy, and then you have the muscle, right? So in this particular case, Joe McCarthy is a bolstering, gregarious, over-the-top, crazy dude on a hunt for commies. Who's going to keep supplying him with the information? Who's going to protect him? Who's his badass number two? You know, who does number two work for?
His number two, the big number two is none other than Roy Cohn, who was the chief counsel to Senator Joe McCarthy.
Now, the curious look that Kahuna has here, yes, as in the HBO documentary that's coming out about him right now. We saw the tail end of it yesterday.
Here on American Loser.
I'm looking at it and I knew that name from somewhere.
Yeah.
I just got HBO Max and there's commercials all over it.
Dude, it was. We only caught the last 40 minutes or so of it, but it was heavy. And what are the cliff notes on this one, Dad?
Yeah, well, the cliff notes is that Roy Cohn is an interesting character on his own right. That he is a young lawyer from New York City, Columbia University. Rose to prominence within the U.S. Department of Justice, catches the eye of J. Edgar, and is quickly put in with Senator Joe McCarthy. Roy Cohn is a character that could probably be a American Loser episode unto himself. Being HBO is already making an episode.
Yeah,
out
you
of him,
bastard. We'll give HBO a plug. They deserve a little bit of our
a
luster.
little bit, just a touch.
Just a little bit.
But Roy Cohn makes a big name for himself in 1951 with the espionage trial of Loserception, Julius, and Ethel Rosenberg. So he was the guy. He was one of the prosecutors in the Rosenberg trial, and actually produced testimony that was central to the Rosenberg's conviction and subsequent execution. Now, it was somewhat suspicious as to why the Rosenbergs were actually executed, but to hear Cohn tell it himself that it was by his own influence that led to the chief prosecutor and the judge that was appointed to the case to go by Cohn's personal recommendation that they should have the death penalty. Most historians would say that Julius Rosenberg was absolutely guilty, but Ethel was probably not, his wife.
It was some perjury, oddly enough. That is what did her in.
Perjury was brought about under the
duress.
duress or ungamely influenced by Mr. Cohn. But now he's working with Joe McCarthy. He's a 24-year-old. This guy's 24. Cohn is a 24-year-old.
But he always looked 68.
Not a handsome man. To be polite, I think you might be, swiping left? Swiping left on that one right from the get-go?
And a different app, as we'll cover here in a second.
But McCarthy hires Cohn as his chief counsel, choosing him over Robert Kennedy. So, I mean, you got Papa Joe's backing here. And to say that we're not going to go with your son Robert, we're gonna have him involved. He's still involved with this McCarthy hearings and stuff, but it's Roy Cohn who is actually the chief counsel under him, and they're calling out different people on the investigations of being communists. And the way they did it was kind of a sneaky, underhanded kind of a thing, too, because they weren't held to a lot of the legalese, if you will, that they were under executive sessions or off-the-record sessions. Still doesn't mean you're not going to be convicted, but, what you might say in an off-a-record kind of a thing might not be held up to the same scrutiny that some of the other shit might done. What was interesting, too, is Roy Cohn also was very much involved with what became known as the Lavender Scare. Now, the Lavender Scare was not only are we searching for communists, but we're also searching for homosexuals that were within the State Department and within the federal government and the military. Now, the Lavender Scare, again, was if you were labeled a homosexual back in those times, back in the 50s, you were pretty much done. You were done. You were out.
I love the name they gave it, too.
Yeah.
Just to make it a little more,
right,
flamboyant, because you're hunting for gay people. Let's name it the Lavender.
We could not, as comics at this table, could not come up with a funnier concept than the Lavender Scare.
Yeah,
it's infuriating how funny that is.
And what's even more bizarre about this whole thing too is Roy Cohn is probably a homosexual himself, and now he's going after other homosexuals within the government type of thing. So. People were convinced that to be labeled a homosexual, you were a threat to national security. And actually, Dwight Eisenhower signed an executive order in '53 to ban homosexuals from working within the federal government.
And they thought Roy was one?
And, at that particular point in time, he wasn't really out in your face with it. That happened a little bit later.
He had the inverse, they said, of the J. Edgar Hoover thing, where J. Edgar Hoover never dressed in women's clothes as far as any of his real serious biographers can determine. But it was such a sensational rumor about him that it took off. So then the opposite would happen. We're like, Roy Cohn's gay. Like, yeah, of course. Yeah, Roy Cohn's gay. Sure, whatever. Meanwhile, he's hanging out in Provincetown a lot.
A lot, yeah.
He owns
the chosen one.
He owns a gym in the village.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, he's in New York? Where? Christopher Street. Damn.
Yeah. And very, very out there with all the hot topics and everything else. Yeah. The hot clubs and everything else. Provincetown, always with tall, blonde, good-looking, athletic, younger male friends. We'll put it that way. But this guy's a snake. But he's also the quintessential. He was labeled by a Harvard law professor, Alan Dershowitz, who is a well-known lawyer himself. Cohn is labeled as the quintessential fixer. That if you got a problem,
I got this.
I got this. I can take care of it. I'll make it happen. I do have a real quick Jersey connection.
Oh,
because
we got another coming too, by the way.
Roy Cohn is he's a snake. There's no doubt about it.
Sometimes you need a snake, though. That's the other weird part.
Yeah, he's also the grandnephew of Joshua Lionel Cohen. Lionel, as in Lionel Trains. Lionel Trains goes through hard times during the
Cohn is out.
Cohn is out. Oh man, I had Lionel trains when I was little.
You mean my Christmases were self-loathing gays?
That was part of the lavender scare. No.
Oh, God.
But Roy Cohn is actually the grandnephew of Joshua Lionel Cohen, who was the founder of Lionel Model Train Company. And later in time, in 59, Roy Cohn takes over, whether it was a family thing or whatever, but he takes over Lionel Trains. He takes it away from other family members and becomes the top dog in the Lionel Trains. But the Jersey connection here is from 1929 to 1974. Lionel Trains factory was right here on our own Hillsdale, New Jersey. So
wow.
there's our Jersey connection for Roy Cohn.
You had to go deep on that. I respect you for what you did there. However, I'm going to hit you with one a little bit more obvious. All right?
Okay.
If you're ready. So there's
I'm
Roy
ready.
Cohn.
Always
We got to cross over because after this HBO doc comes out, people are going to be looking for him. We're going to get some numbers that way. So McCarthy is reigning like a king here. Roy Cohn is labeling books as dangerous from dangerous authors. Eisenhower, in one of his few rebukes, if you will, of McCarthy publicly, he goes, I encourage everyone to go to the library and read every book you can get your hands on. Don't go with the book burners on this one. Ike is cool, man. Ike's about as cool as they get. Next time you're on a highway going in between states, you thank Ike. You know what I mean?
Right. Next time you're stuck in traffic on I-80,
Yes.
thank Ike for at least having an I-80 there.
Well, good old McCarthy's hubris, which is the pride before the fall, is it's about to be on display in Technicolor. So within a few months of his enemies within speech, the term McCarthyism is making the rounds now. Like we said, he's got something named after him. So those who are opposed to it refer to it as a pejorative, like, oh, a McCarthyism, that kind of a thing. Meanwhile, many like playwrights and stuff like that, maybe one such guy who was banging Marilyn Monroe named Arthur Miller is going to write The Crucible.
I thought we were circling back to the Kennedys for a second.
Close. Good knowledge, Joey. But Arthur Miller's The Crucible is written as a kind of an analogy, if you will, to what's going on here with the Red Scare and McCarthyism. Now, if you supported McCarthy, like many did, McCarthyism was called Americanism with its sleeves rolled up. We're ready to get to work, get rid of these goddamn commies.
Let's punch the shit out of some commies.
Exactly. Now, since the time of that speech in West Virginia, his status is now the most dangerous man in D.C. Joe is considered unstoppable until his hubris takes him a little bit too far, and he begins to finally fall here. He's going after elite people, right? And the common folk are just like, almost they're loving it to a degree because it's like, oh, this guy's fighting the elites. It's a good, it's a battle going on in there.
He's one of us.
Exactly. Right. So now Joe begins his investigation into something that's going to blow up in his face like nothing you've ever seen before. McCarthy begins investigating the U.S. Army.
Oh.
Yep. You know those boys that just beat Hitler? Yeah, they're under investigation now. No. McCarthy is ruining careers of elite lawyers, educators, and politicians, but this is different now, okay? He's completely unaware of how bad this is going to backfire on him. He is so eager to start his investigation of the U.S. Army Signal Corps Labs, located in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. You know that building we can see from here?
You look out the window?
Yep. Jersey connection.
Oh, that one?
Jesus.
Right there?
Yep. Same place that Mr. Rosenberg was working on all sorts of fighter jets and bombs and leaking the info to Russia.
Jersey's the center of the universe.
It's the truth, man. It just is.
That's why I haven't left. I can't. I don't think I could physically escape if I wanted
to. Do you actually know anyone who's not from Jersey? Think about it.
You don't have the passport.
It's like Dark City.
My sister lives there. Do I not have a sister? Have I never had a sister?
Think back. Do you have any photos?
No selfies together? No proof.
So that's in Fort Monmouth where he's going to investigate. He actually leaves his honeymoon early in order to come back. He goes, I can't, baby, I love spending time with you. You know, you're my world.
But I got to go fight some commies.
But I'm about to go find commies in the army. But so he goes ahead. Here's the thing about McCarthy. Like we said, he's still a bully. And he's very sloppy in his work. But there is that 10% truth to his lies. So after weeks of hearings, McCarthy's getting these headlines, nonstop press coverage, most dangerous man in D.C., but there's still no evidence. That's how sloppy this dude was. There's legitimate communist shit going on, There's a Rosenberg spy ring operating, right? And McCarthy can't find shit. Okay? That's how ugly it is. Anyway, in order to save face, he shifts gears and begins targeting a New York City dentist named Irving Paris, who had served as an Army officer in World War II and had questionable allegiances. Paris was found to be a member of the left-wing American Labor Party, and McCarthy was able to find anything else like really bad aside from that. But because Paris kept pleading the fifth, meaning I don't have to say anything against myself, McCarthy goes, you see, he's just pleading the fifth to get out of it. I got him cornered, kind of a thing. And Paris had served in a medical capacity at Camp Kilmer, all right? Camp Kilmer in, whoa, you want to guess what state, Kahuna?
New Jersey?
Yeah, you ain't ready for this next part, though. You're not ready for this. I wasn't ready for this. There were 2 famous military members who had been stationed in Camp Kilmer in New Jersey during World War II. Joe DiMaggio and Red Skelton.
Wow.
Skelton would show up as a clown and do comedy therapy for people who were wounded, and Joe DiMaggio was doing hitting lessons for people here in Jersey. Wounded vets were getting hitting lessons from Jolt and Joe. All right?
This is the episode where Kahuna just gives up.
Nope. You ain't even ready yet. Because here's the best part.
What do you
When
mean?
Camp Kilmer closes, they start selling off sections of the acreage. Part of it gets bought up by a little school in New Brunswick. Part of the grounds of Rutgers University,
Wow.
Livingston College, is former Camp Kilmer, which is a World War II staging area. So yeah, New Jersey's the center of the universe.
We really
By the
are.
way, Camp Kilmer is named after a famous World War I poet and New Brunswick native named Joyce Kilmer. Kilmer wrote the famous poem Trees and was killed in action serving in World War I as part of the Fighting 69th, a.k.a. the Irish Brigade, also known as Thomas Francis Maher's Irish Brigade. That is 2 Jersey connections inside a loserception. Thank you very much.
Drop the mic.
Just dropped the mic, shattered it on the floor.
Hit me
So
when
now-
you got something.
That was
Jersey
beautiful.
is the center of the universe, but does that also mean it's the center of communist infiltration or what?
When you're the center of the universe, you have some positives and some negatives.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to take the yin with the yang.
If you got some, I'm going to hop back in here because
No,
we're
go
on
ahead, yeah,
task.
keep
This
it-
is the
keep it
fall,
rolling,
by the
keep
way.
it rolling.
This is the fall of McCarthy right here. Back on task, 1954 now, okay? Things are heating up. McCarthy versus the Army. That's the battle right now. Even McCarthy's most diligent supporters are a little nervous at this idea about him going after guys in the military themselves. The Army devises this genius strategy, all right? What do you do when someone's got you dead to rights on it? What does your girlfriend do, Joe, when you don't have a girlfriend right now? You're actually single and very handsome.
Thank you.
But what does a girlfriend usually do to you when you have them dead to rights on something? What do they do?
Bring up something from 1,000,000 years ago.
And that's exactly what the Army does to Joe McCarthy.
His service record?
No, they it's close. It's in because that was always getting talked about at this point too. Because if you hated McCarthy, you jumped on the first thing.
Tell
you
me,
could.
So-
it's about him taking those shortcuts, though.
I mean, again, that's all almost
Wait,
public
didn't I
knowledge.
set this
so-
up earlier and you both were like, Kahuna?
Sort of. Check this out. They know that they can't hit him on any of the communist stuff. So what they do, because he's going to have a little bit of truth to him and he's going to be able to fight his way through it. I mean, this is old tail gunner Joe. He's bombastic. Senator Tidings got made to look foolish in front of him, you know? So this is what they do. The Army devises a strategy to stay away from confronting him on anything communist. Instead, they make a move where they decide to, it's almost like Johnny Depp recording his conversations with his wife to show how evil she was. Yep. Because you hear the report and you're like, wow, Johnny Depp's roughing up this pretty little girl right here? That's terrible. But then you hear some of the tapes and you realize some of the nasty shit going on over there. Shit, literally. But
Oh,
anyway,
Jesus, KP.
Really?
they don't want to give any openings that McCarthy can dazzle the crowd with. So what better way than to have the hearings broadcast on national television? We know this guy's a bullshit artist and a bully who yells and screams. He's a total alcoholic. There's people saying that they've seen him drunk at the Senate before. All right? You thought John McCain playing Words with Friends was bad at Senate? This dude's showing up trash and then ruining other people's lives. You mess with Joe McCarthy, you go down. You mess with Roy Cohn, your life's over. All right? Those 2 guys are the muscle men of D.C. at this time. So for the next 36 days, 5 weeks really, live on ABC and Dumont, which,
Was a major station at the time.
yeah, also a town you're from.
Right.
But they decide they're going to see this his bully demeanor and his lack of evidence and his sloppy work broadcast live. Okay.
Yeah, so he's on national TV for 8 hours a day. 8 hours a day for the next 36 days. So you talk about, you know, the various trials of the century and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
This was it. I mean,
This is the OJ of their time.
this is
Yeah.
OJ of the time. Absolutely. That you know, housewives are not tuning into as the stomach turns or whatever daytime soap you might be watching.
As the stomach turns.
They're watching. They're watching Senator Joe and Roy Cohn trying to do their thing, and they get caught up in it.
As the comedian here, I do not like that he did a better joke than me just now.
I was thinking the same thing, and now I know where you get your comedy chops.
So the committee and the large TV audiences are watching, often in horror, as Joe McCarthy and Roy Cohn are bullying and parading around shoddy evidence to attack and destroy reputations of very young military guys. Guys, imagine you see a guy in a military uniform, looks like Joe Weber, handsome guy, all-American kid, right? And then you see me coming in there looking all scraggly, just screaming at him, calling him a piece of shit and everything else. You're immediately going to be on his side. That's just human instinct, right?
I'm a nice guy.
You are a nice guy. Now, the exposure is damning for McCarthy. His support in the polls is plummeting on a daily basis. A famous senator, Stuart Symington, had a really cool exchange with him. Not the most famous exchange, though, because we're going to get to a line that was a line heard across the universe, if you will. But Stuart Symington goes, during the height of the hearings, McCarthy yells at him. And he goes, just so you know, Senator Symington, you're not fooling anyone. To which Symington responded, the American people have had a good look at you for 6 weeks now, Senator. You're not fooling anybody else either.
Fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now,
And that, kids, is the first rap battle.
that dude, if that's it, then this dude Welch we're about to talk about is the 8 Mile B Rabbit moment.
I was about to say,
Yes.
It gets
everybody in the 313, put your hands up,
Motherfucking
put hands up and follow me.
Oh man, support continues to drop for old tail gunner Joe, and now even more so within the anti-communist and Republican parties. They start to realize if you're really an anti-communist, you're like, dude, this guy's not doing shit he's actually hurting our cause because this guy's making us look bad. So yeah, there's the fear of a Red Scare, like my father said. There's so much legit shit going on here, but this guy's taking away from everything because he's just trying. That was what you guys said earlier. Is it that he wants to be? What's his next step after this? There is no next step after this. Joe McCarthy was running Washington.
Yeah, he wanted the spotlight on him, and by having this commie thing way back when in 1950 with a Wheeling, West Virginia speech that was totally baseless, he's got the spotlight on him, and he wanted to keep the spotlight on himself. But now he's going to shrink under the pressure of having that spotlight on him for 8 hours a day. And again, like you said before, he's also a tippler. He's hitting the bottle pretty hard, and to hold up under that TV scrutiny for that length of time, that he's crumbling.
He Icarus. He flew too close to the sun.
That's
And
hubris, baby.
the wax,
Right there.
wax
Yeah.
on his wings is starting to melt. Absolutely.
Also, if he's drinking and if these hearings are going on as long as they are, I also like to picture it that because he's a booze bag, he's getting progressively drunker throughout. Where it starts, I was like, and another thing, and I love you guys.
I love this government.
You guys are my best friends, and I thought you were on my side, and you're all being very mean to me.
What do you mean there's no burgers left? I just wanted what?
Roy, I just want to say, man, you're the best fixer I've ever met in my life. You should be proud of yourself, man. Like, don't be ashamed. You're like, guys, it's all good.
Roy, I've had my thoughts too. You know what I mean, right?
Roy Cohn, I want an ice cream cone. So who's making ice cream run?
No, we're not going to the ice cream. We're not going to the ice cream store. Okay.
He's an
Not
asshole.
fair.
Falling asleep while he's eating a burger. But here's the most famous exchange. LP, whenever if you
I
set
just want
something
to
up,
lead into that most famous exchange.
hit me.
Roy Cohn and the Welsh, who was the Army's chief legal counsel, had an agreement beforehand that they weren't going to go there with this particular guy, that he was like a hands-off kind of a thing. And then that Roy Cohn starts his interrogation, if you will, and then McCarthy jumps in, and I'll let you take it from there, Kev. But until this moment,
Oh, yeah, dude, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
Most famous exchange of the entire hearings. Joseph Nye Welch, who's the Army's chief legal rep, gives the line of the century to old Joey Mack. 30th day into the hearings. People are sick of this shit, all right? Welch challenges Roy Cohn. He goes, Mr. Cohn, you keep saying you have this list of 100 communists working within our own defense plants. Why don't you guys present this list to us before the sun goes down today? And it's like, oh, yeah, why don't we see your evidence that you guys are always talking about? And there's, again, that's a whole thing in and of itself. They're getting panicky now. McCarthy jumps in and he goes, pretty much what the modern zeitgeist would refer to as a whataboutism. He goes, oh, well, if you think that we need to get our list, then why don't you look into a guy by the name of Fred Fisher that worked in your own legal office, who is a member of a progressive lawyers group, which is a communist-leaning group. And Welch just snaps. And he goes how the French would say, the fuck off. Hit him with 2 lines of all time. All right. Until this moment, sir, I don't think I've ever fully gauged your cruelty or your recklessness. McCarthy doubles down again, starts to get loud with him. And Welch responds, let's not assassinate this lad any further. You've done enough, Senator. Have you no decency, sir? At long last, sir, have you no decency?
Legendary.
The legendary line, right? McCarthy tries going after him again. Welch interrupts by saying, call the next witness. Fucking standing applause. The place is going nuts.
Honestly,
the
though,
gallery
dude,
breaks
you
out.
don't know what the fuck I've been through.
Yeah.
All right, B Rabbit. See what else you got to play.
Yeah, because up to this time, if McCarthy just challenged you or accused you of being a communist, your career was done. And they've already had an agreement beforehand that they weren't going to call out this young guy that was from within his office. They knew about the guy. They knew about his background. But they had a sidebar agreement that they weren't going to bring this up. And yet McCarthy brings it up anyhow, which basically is a career wrecker for this young guy, right? This young upstart. And that's where he goes off on have you no decency that, we already made a gentleman's agreement here, and you reneged on that, and you still haven't come up with any kind of evidence here. And the crowd, after the 30th day, they just had enough of this shit. So the gallery just jumps into applause that, you have no decency, sir.
Woody Harrelson has a great line in season 1 of True Detective, which I think would be the modern version of this, when he just goes, you really are the Michael Jordan of being a son of a bitch. Wow. So he hits him, man, and the court is now so unhinged that it forces a recess, okay? So the hearings are dismissed for a little while now. Imagine watching that on C-SPAN, by the way. That's got to be nuts. But between the coverage on the daily hearings and these episodes of a very innovative and legendary TV news show that some of our older listeners will know called See It Now, it was pretty much the high watermark of McCarthy's power. His popularity plummets. He's been exposed as a bully and an asshole. This leads to an ostracization of the former Senate and pretty much the guy who was running D.C. for the longest time. He's pretty much, he's a falling star for sure. Now, there's a guy by the name of Ralph Flanders, who's a Republican from Vermont, that would go on to mock McCarthy constantly in both humorous and angry speeches and remarks. Sometimes, what do you need for a bully? Like, we always say this, bullying's wrong, right? Mm-hmm. What if you're bullying a bully?
Yeah.
So old KP had a mouth on him as a kid, right? I used to talk a lot of shit sometimes, but usually it was to talk shit about people that were talking shit too. So it was, I'll let you know that I'm not afraid of you kind of thing. Oof. I got beat up a couple times, but it is what it is.
Cahoon has a great story to this. Someone in 5th or 6th grade was like, "Oh, your dad's nothing. He's not even that big anymore." And I was like, "Well, at least I have a dad."
Whoa!
I was kicked out, and I had
very
to,
fun boat that we're all in. Got some similar stories, man.
Oh my god!
Weber was. I thought I couldn't tell at first. I thought Weber was about to be like, "I gotta go, guys."
It just triggered him out.
Oof. I feel like you have one. So go ahead.
No, I had a guy tell me he was joking around. "Oh, I'm running for treasury." I'm like, "Who's gonna vote for you?" And this is like 4 seconds after I had talked about how my grandfather was on his deathbed. And he goes, "Well, I hope your grandfather dies." So I punched him with the biggest haymaker of my life, and he was a much larger person than me. So that was that fun story. He broke his hand on the back of my head. That's the end of that.
I had a mean comment once about somebody, and then we'll finish up here. But my mean comment was someone, because I'm adopted, right? That's why I don't look as handsome as old Larry over here. But so somebody made a comment one time where they're just like, oh, you're on your second dad now, huh? I see, that kind of a thing. And I just said, I knew the guy's father had passed away, so I said, twice as many dads as you, bud. So. Not exactly have you no decency, sir. But that's funny. By the way, I see what Cahoon just brought up on the screen there for us. So
yeah, and with that, have you no decency, sir? I mean, the Army prosecutor or investigator, if you will, actually had tears in his eyes that McCarthy is saying this about this guy, and knowing that he's going to be ruining this guy's career, that he got emotional over what McCarthy had just said, and that was televised across the nation, that everybody realized that
there's no retracting it now.
Yeah, McCarthy is just an out and out bully, and
you're a bully
and a son of a bitch. So yeah.
So now this guy from Ralph Flanders from Vermont, a Republican going after a Republican, mind you, too, pretty impactful. But he puts his money where his mouth is, and in 1954 he puts forth the motion to have Senator Joe McCarthy officially censured, and condemned for his misuse of power and tactics. The vote passed with no issues. The only Democrat not to vote was then Senator and future President John F. Kennedy, who was recovering from back surgery. That's his excuse. And he never indicated which way he would have voted, right? But there was also a quote that when they asked him about, like, oh, what'd you feel about Joe McCarthy, when he was president? He goes, hell, the people back home in Massachusetts think he's a hero. So Kennedy was the ultimate politician that way.
Still taking care of the hometown crowd, but yeah.
So now the condemnation, if you will, and the censure effectively serves as a political assassination for McCarthy. He remains staunchly anti-communist, but his alcoholism and his well-hidden addiction to, get this, morphine.
Wow.
Yep, he was a morphine junkie. Would debilitate the once gregarious man. Friends found him post-censure to be described as a shell of his former self, and he died on May 2nd, 1957. It was shocking to the nation, but not to those close in his inner circle. They were like, this guy's not going to be here long, man. He's on his last leg. His funeral was quietly attended in Wisconsin by Robert F. Kennedy, who, again, could have been a president himself. And then after his censure, President Eisenhower began referring to, this is a great line. I really do like Ike. The more I read about him, he would refer to McCarthyism. He goes, you mean McCarthy was-ism?
Was-ism.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, I do have something here in a second, but I want to hit you for a casting couch. Do you have one for Roy? If you want, try one for Roy Cohn.
No, I have one for McCarthy.
Talk to me.
But sadly, we would have to go back in time because this guy is deceased. But I would do James Gandolfini.
Ooh, I like that
yeah,
one.
100%.
Like, he's got that.
He could be a bad
Joe
guy.
said Tony Soprano, too. You'd give him a little eyebrow work, and he's there.
Oh, yeah.
I would go.
Oh, I'm
with
from Wisconsin, you motherfuckers.
Honestly, though, those eyebrows, I'd say Clooney if he fattened up a little bit.
Ooh, Fat Clooney.
The fat Clooney could pull that off pretty easily.
I like that one.
Yeah.
Now, here's something interesting. He was once played, I think Roy Cohn was once played by Joe Don Baker, who is infamous amongst the Mystery Science Theater community. He was also played in a play, as we learned, by Nathan Lane, who actually gave a brilliant performance as him, as a conflicted kind of a guy. What was the other one you had, LP? Pacino played him, right? Roy Cohn I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
Pacino played Roy Cohn in Angels in America. But I'm liking this Gandolfini thing you're doing here for our boy Joe McCarthy.
Yeah.
I don't know who I would pick as Cohn.
Cohn has look like my superpower is knowing an actor and 14 movies he's in, but never knowing his name. But I know in the Fast and the Furious movie, Paul Walker broke that actor's nose like 4 times in one movie.
I think I know exactly who you're talking
And
about.
it's that guy to a
Oh,
T.
ludicrous, yeah.
Yeah, I wish. No, but that's a dead ringer if you can pull that one up, Kahuna.
I gotta give me a minute, but
Yeah.
We got something we got to cover, finish up here anyway, so we can end on Casting Couch in that regard. LP, do you have anything else before I go into some of the later stuff that came out about McCarthy?
I just wanted a little tidbit on Roy Cohn, that what a wonderful man he was. That in 1986, he wasn't censured, but he was disbarred. So in 1986, a 5-judge panel of the Appellate Division of New York State Supreme Court disbarred Cohn. In other words, he's no longer a lawyer. for unethical and unprofessional conduct, including misappropriation of clients' funds, lying on the bar application, and pressuring a client to amend his will. It seems that Cohen entered the hospital room of a dying client who was comatose, and he's a multimillionaire and a founder of Shenley Industries. Some of you drinking types might recognize Shenley Industries.
Shenley, you say?
Shenley.
Shenley.
Yeah.
I don't know it.
You know, like Seagram's and that type of thing.
Oh, I see. I gave the booze up, Larry.
Yeah,
I don't know.
sorry.
I don't know what you filthy alcoholics are into.
But Mr. Roy Cohn seemed to have forced the pen in the hand of this comatose client
Holy shit.
lifted it to the will in an attempt to make himself and Kathy Frank Rosenthal, the granddaughter, beneficiaries. So he's taking a comatose client and altering his will that he becomes beneficiary of the dying client's will.
That's how powerful Roy Cohn and Joe McCarthy were. They could, if Joe McCarthy said your name during a hearing, it was game over, right? And Roy Cohn went after you. And watch that documentary too. It was a good documentary. But I do want to, as we're wrapping up here, later documents do reveal there's a lot of truth to some of Cohn's and McCarthy's targets. But again, this is a recurring theme with him. He's fucking sloppy. All right. When you're a booze bag, you don't know how sloppy your work is, you know? He was his deceit-filled and overhanded tactics of Joe and his crew completely undermined the legitimate anti-communist movement in response to the Red Scare. All right. In the end, the senator from Wisconsin remains controversial and largely unsympathetic. Neither party, modern day, has anything kind to say about the man who ruled almost a kangaroo court in D.C. for many years. And like Robespierre, he's not fondly remembered, sometimes not even remembered at all. Robespierre got beheaded because he said that he had the list of names that was going to go after people, and they finally said, let's whack this motherfucker. And they pretty much whacked this motherfucker. Now, the guy you guys are talking about, if this is the actor you just brought up here, is Shea Wiggum.
This is who he said.
That's who I'm thinking could play
Cohen. This is who I picked.
Titus Welliver.
And he played Jimmy O'Fallon on Sons of Anarchy.
Yeah.
He's got that same gaze as Cohen.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's what I think he nails.
Bosch on Amazon Original. And then Shea Wiggum was Eli on Boardwalk Empire, for those who don't know. So two really great actors. You guys picked some good ones for this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see Shea Wiggum.
Who's on Perry Mason now, by the way.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
And still plays kind of like a
Ooh,
dirty down guy.
God damn it. You want to talk about weird right now?
What?
We watched Perry Mason last night. My mom's favorite show as a kid was Perry Mason, so we're watching the new one. And Perry Mason comes on HBO, right? And as soon as that's over, Perry Mason starring Shea Wiggum. And then my father and I say, oh, we can watch that Roy Cohn documentary. So we went right from Perry Mason.
Because you looked at his
Shea
face.
Wiggum. Yeah, Shea Wiggum went right into it. Good call, fellas. Good call. That's going to do it for me here on this one. But I do want to say thank you to Joe Weber coming in. Great guest, by the way.
Anytime, man.
What's the name of your show that's coming out?
It's going to be Comics, Cartoons, and Craft Beers. Just talking about cartoons that I've loved since I was younger and still tragically attached to in my 30s. So we'll see what I can make out of it.
I think it's going to be fun, buddy.
And craft beer.
I think
of course.
Do try to come in here to a shared universe and let the Kahuna work his magic. He makes it fun.
Kahuna might know more than me about the topic, so I'm excited about it.
Cahoon's, do you want? It's the Patreon people, so if you want to tell them where to find a track or two of yours musically or any other.
Yeah, you can find me Arcade Productions on YouTube. Arcade, like an old arcade machine. Currently
Skee ball.
Yeah. Currently working on a web series that I've been working on for almost a year and a half now, and it should be coming out within the next 2 months. So keep an eye out there for that.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's really it.
Well, I want to say thank you, of course, to LP. Love you, dude. This has been very fun, man.
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
going camping next week.
And I would say to our Patreons, you certainly got your $5 worth out of this episode.
Yeah, this one was very fun.
This was a lot of fun.
Stu, let us know if you're alive.
Yeah. Well, we wrote the shit out of these last two, man. We really did get involved, and we wanted to keep it again, and Christian, you've been so good to us. Sorry I called you your real name. Big Kahuna, you have been very good to us with your time. Mike and Ming have been amazing to us, to be honest. And our Patreon listeners, you guys, the show exists because of you. I can afford to keep doing free episodes on Tuesdays because you guys are willing to give me $5 a month. It means a lot, okay? So thank you for that. Thank you for sacrificing your large coffee over at Dunkin' Donuts. But thank you for that, guys. We're going to keep these bad boys coming out for you. Every Tuesday, you'll get a free show. And as long as we keep doing this one, we're going to give extra content. We're figuring other stuff out. There's some video content we're working on soon, right, Cahoons?
We are.
Oh, yeah, buddy.
Yeah, and I would say, too, to the Patreons, if they have an American Loser that they think might be worthy of the American Loser episode, give us a note on that.
We do get sent some cool stuff.
Yeah.
I got to make you privy to some of our back catalog, but we get a lot of cool stuff there. So, guys, again, thank you so much for everything. Sharing the show helps us out. We're completely grassroots that way. We're trying to get better with marketing. We got some people that are going to help us out with that, but it is what it is. This is a grassroots show. It exists because of you. All right, we're like PBS, but alcoholic versions. So,
Power to the people.
Exactly. So
Accurate.
that being said, guys, check it out. If we're not already friends on Facebook, hit me up. Just tell me you listen to the show, man. I like talking to people. It's very fun. A lot of the fans give us cool feedback on stuff like that too. At KP Burke Sucks over on Instagram, American Loser Podcast on Instagram. Check us out. Both pages are up on the Facebook right now. And of course, you guys already know about our Patreon because you're the best. And guys, that was Senator Joe McCarthy, American Loser.
An American loser the day I was born. An American loser the day I was born. An American loser the day I was born.